Have you ever noticed that sometimes people with dementia will remember things that aren't even true? They'll remember that somebody's stealing from them, that somebody's following them, that somebody's trying to harm them, that children were there last night. Even though none of it was true, they remember it down to all of the details. Yet, when it comes to things that actually did happen, what you said, what you did, what's going to happen in the near future, they can't remember it at all. So, how does somebody with dementia remember a delusion perfectly, yet they don't remember what's actually happening? We're going to talk about that today. So, to understand why this happens, there are two different memory systems in the brain. One is emotional memory, and the other is factual memory. And dementia doesn't impact both types equally. So, when we think about actual memory, this is where we are talking about the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that remembers what actually happened, who did what, where you put your things, who visited, what you ate recently, basically all of the reality-based facts. This system relies heavily on the hippocampus. And that word might sound familiar because people with Alzheimer's disease often have a lot of atrophy, deterioration in the hippocampus. That's why people with Alzheimer's disease have some of the worst memory. So when we start to see the hippocampus struggle, this is where actual memories become spotty, distorted, fragile, or basically completely absent. They don't even remember things that have happened. That's factual memory. Now let's talk about emotional memory. This is where we're talking about the areas of the brain called the amygdala and the default mode network. Now, this system of the brain, this is where it stores fear, anxiety, safety, suspicion, trauma, old habits. It's where comfort lies, fear lies, imagination based stories. Now, this part of the brain stays active much longer through the dementia process. And this is the part of the brain that fuels delusions. Remember, delusions are very strong fixed belief that a person believes despite all the evidence to the contrary. It doesn't matter how much proof you have or evidence you have that whatever they're believing is not true, they are believing it very strongly. And this explains why the person with dementia might not be able to recall details of the truth, yet they seem to be able to recall all the details of the delusion. Now, sometimes people think that when somebody with dementia has a delusion, they think the person is just losing touch with reality or that the person's doing it on purpose or just making things up. But actually, delusions are the brain's attempt to fill in gaps in memory, to make sense out of confusion, to reduce fear, increase comfort, basically just fill in the gaps of the missing information they don't have in their brain. So if the brain can't remember the truth, it can fill in the gaps of what it think might be the truth. This is actually something many people with alcohol-related dementia experience. And there's another term for it called confabulation, where they're basically just the brain's trying to fill in gaps to make sense. So they'll make up things that are not true or didn't happen. But the big difference between a delusion and confabulation is a delusion is a fixed belief they kind of get stuck on. They'll repeat it over and over. It's kind of a general pattern. You might be feeling, oh no, not this again. Versus in confabulation, it could be a one-off thing. So-and-so came to visit. I ate a pot pie for lunch. They're just all kinds of things. It's not like one fixed belief. Regardless of if we are talking about a delusion or confabulation, it's important to know it's not intentional. They're not doing this on purpose. They do not have control over this. Their brain is being forced to rely on emotional memory because the factual memory centers of the brain have deteriorated so much. So when we're looking at the hippocampus, we are looking at recent memory loss. They're not going to remember recent details, recent conversations, real sequences of time. And when we're talking about the prefrontal cortex, this is really reality checking facts. So they might not be able to use logic, reasoning, have good judgment, or be able to say like, that doesn't make sense. So that's the factual memory part of the brain, the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. And then when the amygdala starts to take over, this is the alarm centers of the brain. It stores and scans for fear. It's kind of the fight or flight area of the brain. If anything feels confusing, disorienting, it feels unsafe, it's basically the amygdala is alerting the brain, somebody's stealing from me, somebody's trying to harm me, somebody's watching me. And that's why we see a lot of people with dementia have that kind of fear-based anxiety. And because those thoughts feel so emotionally true, it's accompanied by very strong emotions on behalf of the person with dementia, where we, the Careblazer, are trying to figure out ways to calm them and to comfort them because their reality has turned scary. Now, the default mode network, also part of what we'll consider the emotional memory, it's trying to make sense without having the facts, and it's pulling from things like childhood, imagination, dreams, old memories, which might be why they're all of a sudden fixated on things of the past. I've talked to so many Careblazers where their loved one is saying something over and over. They're not quite sure what it means. And then eventually they discovered it was something from their childhood or a memory from the past. And the reason why delusions stick so much, but factual memories don't, is because those emotional memories, they are emotional. We remember those emotions. The brain will remember emotion far longer than it remembers facts. That's because emotion activates a chemical called norepinephrine, and that chemical stamps memories deeper than any sort of normal everyday events that are not emotionally charged. We're always going to remember emotionally charged events much stronger. So maybe they don't remember that you visited them, but they remembered that you or somebody else in their mind stole from them. Somebody was in their room or the neighbor tried to break in again. So what does this mean for you as a Careblazer? Again, we've already talked about how this is out of their control. They're not doing this on purpose. Their brain is trying to protect them, make sure they stay safe. We already know all of that. And quite honestly, just knowing that can bring a little bit of compassion and understanding for the situation. But what do we do beyond that? What steps can we take? Number one, I've talked about it before. We want to respond to the emotion the person with dementia is showing us and not their words, not their story. You're never going to win with their story. We're never going to talk them out of a delusion. They're going to believe what they believe. What we want to do is we want to comfort them. We want to reassure them. We want to hear what they are saying. So instead of saying something like, well, that didn't happen, or you're wrong, or no one took anything, nobody came into the house, instead you want to shift it to, that sounds scary, or I'm here with you, or you're safe, or it's going to be okay. Again, whatever their emotion is, you want to try to respond to that and let the story and the exact words go. Number two, avoid any sort of reflex or urge to argue with them. And number three, look for any patterns or triggers that might be making the delusions or even hallucinations worse. For instance, times of day, what they were doing around the time that the symptom appeared, how they slept, what they ate, any changes in medication, any certain type of visitors that come around. Even environmental cues like lighting, what's on TV. We always want to be increasing our skills as the dementia detective. So the reason your loved one remembers a delusion clearly, but can't remember what you told them 10 minutes ago, it's because the brain is shifting from a factual-based memory to an emotional-based memory. If you want to learn more about brain-based information and psychology-backed techniques to help get through the caregiving journey with the least amount of stress possible, make sure you hit the red subscribe button. It's totally free. Also, there's a link below this video where you can sign up for our Dementia Dose weekly newsletter with over 86,000 current subscribers. Oh, and if any of this sounds really weird or bizarre, I've also included citations to evidence-based studies and research articles that talk about what I'm talking about here. So if you want to dive deep into the science, you can access those references below as well. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll be back next week. Bye.
Also, Nico gets a belly rub for every person who subscribes from this video. So if you haven't already, click the red subscribe button. It's totally free, and Nico says thank you very much.